everyone. Think Talent recently turned 15, and for us, it's a huge milestone. Something we never imagined we will get to when we started off this journey in 2010. Also, on the way, there have been many changes, for the industry, for us at Think Talent. So, in this video, Bimal and I wanted to discuss our views on what we see as some of the key changes and trends in the way companies manage leadership, talent, culture, and what it means for us at Think Talent and how are we responding to this. So, Bimal, thanks for joining. When we had last recorded such a video, we had just turned 10, and it was right in the middle of the pandemic. And, things have certainly changed quite a bit since then. So, what do you see as some of the key trends and challenges, especially in the last
Uh,
5 years?
Yeah, I think before we go there, I think congratulations are in order to all of us. I think both of us certainly leading the organization and the rest of the team. And I think with the support of our customers and partners and other ecosystem players, I think it's been a interesting ride is perhaps the best way to sort of describe it. But I think if I look at the last few years and going into the next 3 4 years maybe, I think fundamentally there are three four changes which are in a way impacting us or relevant for us kind of a thing. One clearly is this whole issue of you know an integration of the functional and business side to the whole behavioral side. It's no more saying that, okay, HR should dabble only in the in whether it is learning or assessments and whatever. So there's a lot more integration between business function and behavioral, and they're not as independent as it used to be kind of a thing in some ways, right? The second obviously is that the demand for agility is going up by the week. Okay, and organizations have to respond and figure out what's the best way they can deliver quicker, faster, speedier, failing faster and recovering from there to their customers kind of a thing. And obviously the whole thing about the digital and now there's a lot of talk about AI and LLM and this and that and all that, and I think that's taken up a lot of mind space. I'm not sure how much of that is actually rhetoric and semantics, and how much of that is in actual use. But certainly there's a lot of discussion around that. And I think the final one is that given all of this stuff, um, I think organizations have got to be designed and redesigned, and roles have to be, or jobs have to be redesigned. That's the other trend which we are seeing a lot of companies actually dabbling with. But I'm not sure, Anjul, maybe there are other things you are seeing because you may be interacting with customers much more than I do actually.
No, I think these are certainly the key issues, especially the first one that you talked about, which is the blurring of the boundary between functional and behavioral. That is certainly something which has always been there. Some organizations were, taking a more comprehensive view, and others were still, our HR teams were focused on behavioral. But in the last 3 4 years, I certainly see many more organizations uh, trying to take a more comprehensive view of issues. I think it reflects in, for example, the competency frameworks which are now getting used, especially in assessments, the nature of learning programs, where instead of focusing on the traditional soft skills or management skills, businesses are coming back and saying these are the three issues we want leaders to be able to kind of handle better, and you do whatever you need to in order to be able to skill them better, so taking a more business centric view of issues. So certainly that is happening, and that has a huge impact on, for us at Think Talent, how do we do that better. So for example, if you look at our partner network, and the people we work with, certainly that nature of that network has changed over the last 5 years. We certainly now have many more people who are coming from a more business or a kind of a non-HR
Mm.
background, if you can call it that, and learning to be able to work with them, speak their language. At least for me personally, at least that has been a huge
Mm.
learning curve.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think, it's interesting. And for those of you who may be, listening to us for the first time, our organizational model actually is that while we hold a few things like, design and technology and program management and the consulting piece to some degree internally, but we work with a very large set of partners, whether it is an assessment or learning and so on and so forth. And I think, like Anjul mentioned, the mix of people in the partner network has, while the partner network expanded, so more people from the business side have sort of joined, and that's the point, Anjul, you are making. But also, I see in a way, a corollary, which is that, because of this blurring of lines, as you call it, I think, uh, whether when you are assessing a person or you're looking at a development journey or you're looking at a 360 or any kind of planning from a talent and leadership point of view, this whole concept of the person can be very good at some hard stuff and not so good at the soft stuff. So that either has moved into and it cannot be either or. That I am a great marketeer, but I've got poor people skills, for example, or I've got great people skills, but I don't know enough about technology. Both are no more, relevant kind of a thing. That also, brings me to something which we've been talking about for the last many years, which is about, uh, the whole democratization of investment in talent and the democratization of talent, which is that, you're not investing in only a few quote unquote stars, for two reasons. One is that organizations are flattening, and therefore, you don't know where the next innovation or the next idea or the next star, so called, will come from. So unless you're investing in a large pool of people and, making the whole development thing, relevant, uh, the agility of the larger organization actually goes down. And this whole point about agility we talked about, I think, is an important aspect to think about. But from your role point of view, Anjul, if I may ask, because, again, you work, much more with not just customers, but with internal teams within Think Talent. Uh, how have you seen the internal team evolve, and what are their challenges as we sort of go along?
I think that is one of the big positives, Vimal, as I see it in the way we have been able to kind of grow Think Talent. If you look at our team today, almost 70% of our team has 4+ years in the organization, which is very unique in at least certainly our industry, if not overall, context. And that has really helped. So I think the two things which I think has really helped, one is the investments that we have made in technology over the last 10, 12 years. I think that is really helping us scale up and service this whole need to democratize talent management and learning. Also, the agility piece in some sense, because our ability to scale up quickly is part of the whole agility equation in my mind. But it also kind of going back to the whole traditional thing around what does it take to move faster. I think somewhere I feel that whole element of trust and being able to kind of work with like-minded people, those are things that are coming back into the equation very
Mm,
strongly, and that
mm,
has been one learning for me. How do you work with people who trust you and you trust them, and then therefore the ability to then move quickly to the next step in any project rather than spending a lot of time building that equation. That is certainly the other thing which I feel is allowing us to be able to move very quickly as and when clients come back to us with a specific need, or
yeah.
especially a need around speed. I think that is one of the big positives, Vimal, as I see it in the way we have been able to kind of grow Think Talent. If you look at our team today, almost 70% of our team has 4+ years in the organization, which is very unique in at least certainly our industry, if not
Yeah.
overall. Uh,
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and I keep harping about this whole thing about simplicity and co-creation and so on and so forth. And I think, if you add those elements to the element of trust, uh, one of my reflections over the last few years has been that, there's a lot of conversation around, uh, well, AI is one of them, but other conversations as well, where I think there is a tendency to make things over complex. So fine, yeah, when you're creating a solution, maybe, or a design, maybe there's a lot more complexity kind of a thing. But when you want to scale it and you want to implement it through a technology platform and make sure there is adoption of something, uh, I think simplicity is the key. And in my mind, simplicity also brings or adds to the trust, because simplicity has this element of transparency. Because the more opaque and complex you make things, clients are trying to figure out why this should be so complex. So I think one of the values which we've lived for, which is the whole simplicity, and then of course trust is part of our core values. I think those have held us in very good state. And it's understated, in the sense that we don't really talk about it as much with outside, but I'm sure that our data points of the fact that a lot of clients have been working with us for 10 years and 12 years and so on and so forth, and continue to work with us, is, I think, a good, how do you put it, a good uh, you know uh, proof of this whole element of trust, simplicity, and co-creation. That's how I see it, kind of a thing. So it's a good point. Yeah.
Right. No, the other part of it, Bimal, which I certainly see happening is that, you mentioned AI and, whether you like it or not, digital is here to stay, whether it is AI or automation or other stuff. And it is certainly putting a lot of pressure on organizations to not only adopt, but adoption will certainly mean changes in terms of the structure of organizations, the roles that people and teams will have, and it is a change which is inevitable. For some industries it is already happening, for others it is in pipeline. And one of the things I certainly see business leaders talking about is also this whole build versus buy equation, and how having a more stable organization allows them to have a culture and a degree of trust which enables this whole change management process. If you are always in flux, it somehow becomes an inhibitor for any
Hmm.
change to happen meaningfully. So in that sense, even from a talent management perspective, I see most organizations, especially large organizations, going back and revisiting that build versus buy
Hmm.
equation,
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, and putting a lot more focus on the whole building talent pipelines and, and investing in that, which I think is for us a great story and certainly has helped us scale up the business in the last 5 years.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, yesterday I was having a chat with somebody, and this whole thing about uh, always spending a lot of attention, time, and resources on trying to hire from outside because you don't have enough, uh, you don't understand your talent uh, as well as, because everybody wants to do well for themselves. I am yet to meet, by and large, professionals who would want to say that, okay, and everybody wants to learn, everybody wants to do stuff. I think organizations also need to learn how to enable that, not just through structures and roles and all that, but also investing, I guess, in people, and trusting them to develop. And of course there will always be some outliers where things may not work and you have to do what you have to do. But in general, my sense is that you know these conversations, like I was having, one yesterday, I think the CEO, after a lot of experimentation over 2 years of saying, let's get in people from outside, I think there's a realization that perhaps that by itself, that strategy may not really work, even with very skilled people. Of course, you need to get in some very specialized skills once in a while, but in general, for middle to large size organizations, you need to carry everybody along, and therefore that investing in everybody, and how do you uh, and one of the points he was making, which was an interesting one, saying that when there is crisis, only the people you have invested in will stand by you. And given the nature of the world now, the number of crises over every 10 years will be much larger for organizations than they have been in
Right.
the past. So who do you want to be standing next to you is a big question mark, actually. And that was an interesting reflection, actually. So
Certainly. And this change, I think, while sometimes all changes are challenging, but it's also, I think, for most organizations, a great opportunity to create organization structures with more meaningful roles, more meaningful utilization of people that they have, and at the same time, create more meaningful frameworks for people to actually be able to progress in the organization. We hear, and I'm sure you also hear a lot of discussion around Gen Z and how do organizations adapt to this new workforce which is coming
Mm,
in. But I
mm,
think sometimes it's also about going back to the basics. How do you improve supervisor capability? How do you create more meaningful frameworks for progression? How do you create more transparency around some of these issues? I think those are more basic issues that first need to be addressed. And I
mm.
think my conversations, at least with the younger people I am now meeting, I think they are not looking for anything extraordinary. I think they're just more vocal about their
Mm,
expectations around
mm.
some of these things, which is something which I
Yeah.
think is reasonable.
I think, that's an interesting point you make, because I think from an organizational perspective, um, of course, there's a lot of talk about the fact that, leaders need to be different, the leadership capabilities will needed in the future will be different, etc., etc. My own view is that, you talked about trust. So trust and balance, I think, are going to be two very key things, because there's so much of noise around. And, because of social media, because of information overload and, over overload, if I may call it that, I think the ability of leaders to be able to pick up two, three things and do them really well at the basics. For example, managerial capability at the basic first line manager and so on and so forth, and the ability to have good quality conversations, rather than relying only on social media and emails and technology to do your work for you. Partnering, collaboration. Of course, the nature of collaboration may now have more machines and technology built in, but the fundamentals of that don't go out. That how do you deal with conflict if there is a conflict? How do you build something together as against wanting to let's say do everything yourself. And so I think going back to basics, as you're calling it, is something certainly worth reflecting on for organizations. I think one point I wanted to make, Anjul, before we go on to the last part, is that uh, think talent, of course, supports organizations in this whole talent and leadership and culture area and so on and so forth. uh, I think for organizations like us also, the whole, we've of course seen think talent transform, and we track some of our other peers in the industry, and we see that happening. Uh, but I think that the fact that we've been around for 15 years and sustained, and our customers have been partners with us through this journey, etc., also tells me that while there's a lot of discussion around short termism and creating value for quarters and weeks and all that, you do that. Obviously, you do everything every day and every week and month. But I think resilience and long term stay is here to stay. I think companies which will have a long term view of creating value are likely to sustain much more than the ones which are getting into a here's a fad, let me try it out. Here's a fad, let me try it out. Experimentation is important, but I think differentiating between fads and something which will stay long term, and that goes back to the point you're making about stick to the basics. Even at Think Talent, treat people well, make sure that they have a good quality job, make sure that they find purpose and meaning. And I'm just reflecting on your comment that uh, have we done that extremely well at Think Talent internally, and where could we further improve going forward? So that's a point of, I guess, thought for you and me and the rest of the leadership team as to what else can we do better in those basic side, so to say. Yeah.
No, certainly. I think that has been my learning, at least as someone who is running a business, that one, you have to treat people well, and hope that they are seeing the same picture of the future as you are trying to see. Also, what I have learned is that things don't always work out the way you want them to. Things take
Mm,
longer.
mm,
Things You have to be agile in evolving with the feedback that you are getting from the market. And uh, it is painful, because when you try something and it doesn't work, it is painful. But like you said, resilience and taking a more long-term view of things is what has helped. And being very clear, why are you doing this? I think one of the things I often hear people talk about is, and when especially the question of why are you doing this? I think people get into things without being very clear why are they doing things, and then obviously when there is pushback and it kind of then resilience becomes difficult, right? So certainly in my mind, these are things which are going back to the basic. These are not new things, but somewhere in the kind of gone off the table. And at least for you and me, hopefully this next 5 years continue to be the same as the last 5 years in terms of new experiences, new challenges. So
Yeah.
let's hope for that.
Yes. So good. So again, I think, for the team who may be watching this, I think congratulations to all of you, including, of course, Anjul and me. I am increasingly, of course, uh, at the stage of having run this for 15 years and, in a way, handed over the business to Anjul over the last couple of years, wanting to experiment more, try out a few new things, maybe dabble in, seeing what else can we do both at Think Talent and otherwise personally for me. But I think the satisfaction of the last having built something solid and something which can be sustained over the next few decades, if is something which I am seeing, and I'm hoping that the current leadership and future leadership will be able to sort of take it forward. So yeah, good. So it's been fun. It's been up and down, but 15 years has been extremely rewarding. That's all I can say.
Sure. Thanks, Bimal.